2015 brought the release of a game that changed the landscape of indie games as we know it, with the release of Undertale. This game pioneered the new trend of fourth wall breaking indie games with mysterious storytelling, hidden roots, dark themes, and of course, quirky characters. It was a smash hit, taking over the internet and created a fan base that is still remarkably active all these years later. But then on Halloween of 2018, a mysterious sequel/spin-off to Undertale titled Deltarune hit the internet. And of course, Deltarune swiftly joined its older brother as an instant classic and smash hit. But once you hit the end of the game, it was clear that the Deltarune experience was just beginning. Flash to a week ago today, Chapter 2 of Deltarune dropped, and it's swiftly become probably my favorite piece of content to crest the Undertale mythos. But why does Deltarune Chapter 2 relate to me so hard? Well, let's talk about it. Hi everyone, I'm RV Rocks, and to be honest, I liked Deltarune Chapter 1 far more than I liked Undertale. Granted, some of that is probably because Deltarune is a sequel, so you get that excitement of seeing everyone again and making connections to the main universe and all that junk, but something about Deltarune had me far more invested in the story that game was trying to tell. Maybe it's because they left it open-ended. Maybe it's because it's a much more down-to-earth story and setting. Maybe it's because Susie in the Dark World is peak character design. I don't know. But moments after playing this game, I knew I was instantly hooked, and excitedly anticipating Chapter 2. Little did I know that Chapter 2 would come out 3 years after Chapter 1. But I guess them's the breaks on indie games. You get interesting new takes on gaming with full creative vision by a small team of people, but you wait a couple years for the next piece of the story. Undertale was a game that I loved, but I think I played it wrong. I played Genocide first, much to the behest of just about everyone I knew who loved the game, and that caused subsequent playthroughs of the neutral and pacifist routes to be entirely tired. The main gameplay of Undertale is all based around these bullet hell segments, but in retrospect, it's clear that Genocide is basically the going an extra mile route. In a pacifist playthrough, you have all these nice moments with the bullet hell gameplay to help break up the monotony of just reading a nice story. But then with Genocide, the bullet hell gameplay is basically the only gameplay, and that leads to you hating the bullet hell segments by the end of it. Flash to Deltarune, and there's basically none of this choice nonsense. Your choices basically only lie in how you, the player, want to play the game, and doesn't affect the story. And the story that does play out fucking rules. It's so weird to me how one of the first game's main themes was choice and consequence, and then the sequel basically obliterates that theming only for me to end up liking it much better because in my opinion, it's just a straight up better story. Undertale was all about choice. Deltarune Chapter 1 was all about enforcing how your choices don't matter, with only 1 or 2 moments in the game really differing if you killed things. However, Chapter 2 changes things up slightly and has your choices matter, but only somewhat. I think the better way to put it is that your choices don't matter. But when I say you, I mean you as in the player. The player's choices don't matter. But I might be getting ahead of myself just a little bit here. Before I can get into that, I need to talk about the story and the characters. Chapter 1 took you through a world of colorful characters who were more or less all based on playing cards and board game pieces, which was fun enough. But Chapter 2 appeals to us #gamers far more by making it all computer themed. You see, it's highly implied, but never directly stated, that the inhabitants of Deltarune's Dark World are all correlated with real-world objects, with stuff like your sword changing to a pencil in your inventory when you enter the Light World. Whether it's all imaginary or the Dark World is actually transforming stuff to be these fun creatures whenever a dark fountain is opened is probably more MatPat's territory than mine, but this allows for some very clever design. When you have to keep everything more or less parallel to a real-world object or theme, every area and NPC becomes this kind of guessing game on what they're supposed to reflect. And this time around, the Dark Fountain has opened in the local library's computer lab, leading to a bunch of technology and computer-based enemies. There's plugs, mice, all these cat monsters named tasks, and later you bump into someone who trains them, and they're named the Task Manager. Stuff like that. It's silly, but very cute, and leads to some fun moments of discovery. Some of my personal favorites from this chapter were the aforementioned Task Manager, the Boombox Trio that showed up every now and then, the Queen, who is an absolute show stealer, I'm not kidding, just about every moment she was on screen led to me laughing somehow, and of course, Newbert. Although, I'll be honest with you, I did not care for Spampton. The characters returning from Chapter 1 are all as good as ever. It's really weird how in canon, Chapter 1 was only a day before Chapter 2, but for us it was 3 years. But I really like catching up with all these faces after so long. Susie is still very endearing and probably my favorite character, even if she's a little mean. I don't remember if it's ever directly stated in Chapter 1, but in Chapter 2, it's pretty heavily implied that Susie comes from a very poor home life, and that just helps endear me to the character that much more. Rosie is still super confident in Chris, but frankly, he gave me weird vibes throughout the chapter. I bet by story's end, he becomes some kind of villain. And Chris is now referred to with they them pronouns, which might have been the case for Chapter 1, but I honestly can't remember. But either way, this really helps accentuate the feeling that Chris is basically a vessel for the player, which, given that they are shown to have some kind of agency outside the player, worries me. However, the focus and highlight of Chapter 2 is clearly on the newer faces to join you on this journey. I say newer because outside of enemies, we've basically met everyone here before, albeit in a limited capacity. In Chapter 2, your classmates Noelle and Berdly join you in the Dark World, and these two are such welcome additions to this game. With Chapter 2's ending, I get the feeling that each chapter of the game will involve different characters / locations being transformed into the Dark World, leading to you finding out more about them. But back to the two we bring into the Dark World in Chapter 2, Berdly is fucking hilarious. He gives me the same vibes characters like Joshu or Kite Man give me, in which they kinda suck at everything, but boy do they try so hard. He's a gamer / smart kid who basically thinks that because he is a gamer and smart, he is better than everyone else. But throughout the chapter, you get to see a new look at him and realize that while he is kind of a douche, he really cares about Noelle. And he pretty much admits to using his intelligence as a defense mechanism of sorts. He's still annoying and thinks he's way cooler than he actually is, but by the end of the game, you kinda understand where he's coming from, and it shows that deep down, he really is a good person. He even gets a pretty noble self-sacrifice moment in the Snowgrave Route, which I'll talk about later. The other person who comes along, Noelle, is an absolute sweetheart. I think we all expected Noelle to have a bigger role after Chapter 1, given that her dad was put in a pretty decent spotlight and Toby composed a whole theme for her, but I was not expecting just how much of a highlight she would be in this story. Noelle is revealed to have both a large part in Chris's past, as well as a crush on Susie, basically giving her a big connection to both of our protagonists. Not to mention, she literally becomes the fourth party member, basically making her the Aerith of this game as well. She still has a lot about her shrouded in mystery, like whatever happened to her sister December, her home life, and what exactly draws her to Susie, but she's just so nice. Chris is silent, Berdly is cocky, Susie is mean, and Rosie's not real, so having a character who's just a good person is oddly refreshing. Her personality doesn't just end there though. Between conversations with her and her dad this chapter, you learn that she basically lets everyone walk all over her and can't really say no. And her realization of this and her kind of getting over it is one of my favorite parts of the chapter. But Noelle is the star player of the aforementioned Snowgrave Route, which I guess I'll talk about now. So Undertale had 3 routes to go through. There was the pacifist route, where you kill no one, the genocide route, where you kill everyone, and the neutral route, where you kill sometimes. As mentioned earlier, Deltarune Chapter 1 didn't have alternate routes, barely changing if you killed or didn't. But Chapter 2 features its own genocide route of sorts, which most people are dubbing the Snowgrave Route. I won't talk about everything here because frankly, not too much changes, but the long and short of it is, instead of you, the player, killing everything, you're now forcing Noelle into killing everything. Is it horrible? Yes. Did I feel bad doing it? Yes. But is it a cool twist on the whole genocide concept? Also yes. This goes back to what I said earlier. The player's choices don't matter, but you can influence Noelle into making choices that do matter. Since Noelle can't say no, she forces herself into believing that you're making her stronger, and later convinces herself that it's a dream. But you know it's not a dream, making this route a very depressing one. My favorite moment from this, hands down, is Berdly getting a hero moment by immediately noticing something is wrong and vowing to take down Chris for making Noelle do all this. This prompts a battle between your party and Berdly, in which all of Berdly's attacks only deal damage to Chris. Without any dialogue, I think that says a lot. The only way to progress through this fight is to force Noelle to use a spell called Snowgrave. And when I say force Noelle, you really force Noelle. Using the spell instantly ices Berdly. Pun not intended. And once again, I don't want to theorize too much, but the spell is called Snowgrave, and we know her sister December has passed on in some tragic accident, and their family's surname is Holiday. It just makes it feel that much grosser. However, all things considered, I like this little twist on the genocide route a lot, and I think that giving Berdly a good guy moment is a very nice way to endear us to his character. Especially since in the normal route, even after he's had his quote-unquote change of heart, he's still a big goofball. And I think that right there nails home why Deltarune, and more specifically Chapter 2, is doing so much for me. The characters. The original Undertale was a very much typical isekai setting, with Frisk falling down into the Monster Kingdom, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with this setup. But Deltarune has all this mystery, this pizzazz. You're not straight up introduced to every character. Chris already has known these guys for years and has grown up with them. You, the player, just showed up randomly. Yeah, Undertale is a good game, but now that we're getting this sort of post-scratch universe with all the characters from the first suddenly having different roles and relationships and all these new faces showing up just opens itself for far more investment from me. Then add in the identity crisis with Chris and the player, the mystery of Susie and Noelle's home lives, and whatever the fuck the situation is with Azriel, and you've got yourself my money, Toby Fox. But that's another thing. You're not gonna get my money because the game is free. I have no idea if the other chapters will be, but you can get a solid 11 hours of game right now for absolutely free on Steam. And typically episodic releases really annoy me, but it works for this game because they just allow for everyone to get hyped at around the same time and constantly be discussing theories and such. I feel like I need to keep reiterating that I really liked Undertale, but something about Deltarune just has me far more invested in its story. What else can I say? Deltarune, it just hits different. And if you think that my channel hits different, then why don't you subscribe to RV Rocks and ring the bell? Like this video and comment your thoughts about Deltarune Chapter 2. Please make sure to go over and pop by the IndieLand stream because I want to appease Papa Gerard and I really believe in the cause. If you do, tell him that RV sent you. I have no idea whether or not this video will reach a wide enough audience for that to matter, but you know what? Let's give it a shot. But before you do any of that, I have been RV Rocks and thank you so much for watching. See ya!